So we started off by talking about encounters with strangers, recognizing Christ, even though we don't necessarily have any religious background. And then we talked about the temple, and that the glory of God is not a big thing, it's a tiny little spark inside of all of us. And then we talked about encountering strangers along the way, that even Mary had to make this choice when she was confronted with a stranger, as did Abraham and Sarah. And then we talked about the purchase yesterday, about how it seems God has taken our yes for granted. But we're not finished yet. We still have firstborn children that we have to let go of and give to God so God can give them back to us. So today and tomorrow and Thursday, we're going to spend some time with Simeon and Anna in the temple. And we want to think a little bit in terms of wisdom, because wisdom is what they bring to us. And wisdom is uncommon, because our culture is filled with a preoccupation with data, information, and it's just filled with information, all statistics, all that sort of world. And we mistake that for wisdom. And sometimes it's not easy to describe what wisdom is. But I remember some years ago I was on, when I was much younger, I was invited to go on a horse trip with a couple of cowboy friends of mine. And so we had these two pack horses, and they had trees on them, two trees back to back, and they would hang these packs on these horses. And it included tents and pegs and a stove and food and coffee and beans and fishing stuff and all this sort of stuff. I didn't pay much attention to what was going on when we left, but when it was time to come home, it was kind of a drizzly day out. I was impatient to get home. And these two cowboys, they had these packs, and they're big canvas sacks, so they would pick them up. He would pick them up like this, and then he'd turn around like this, and he'd pick them up again, and then he'd pick them up like this, and then he'd take a can of beans out of this one and put it over in this one, and then he'd try it again, pick them up again, and put them down. And then he'd say to George, you try it, and the other guy, cowboy, would come over, he'd pick them up, and then he'd turn around, he'd pick them up again, and then he'd come back, and he'd take a little box of tea, and move from that one back there, and he said, and I'm watching this show and thinking, let's get on with this, boys. It's wet out. It's cold. And they said to me, Tim, they said, if we don't get this right, we're going to have a rodeo, and we'll be picking cans of peanut butter and toast and coffee out of the river. Because if that animal senses that those packs are uneven, he's going to start to get restless. And the next thing you know, he's going to try and even them out. The next thing you know, he's going to give a kick because he doesn't like that pack over here. And it'll all be all over the place. It was a wonderful illustration, because you can't learn that in a book. You know? Those men had learned that by going on trips, on horse trips over and over. They learned it from life's experience. And that's, I think, part of what is supposed to be happening to us as we come to this point in our life, as we get older and more frail, and realize that everything that could be lost is going to be lost. That's what's going to happen to us. And I've been going through some of this myself with this hip of mine, and I got a phone call yesterday from the pain clinic in Lethbridge saying they can give me a cortisone shot in this hip, and maybe that'll help us. So if you told me 2 years ago I'd be delighted to hear from a pain clinic, I would have laughed and said, oh, don't be ridiculous. But I'm quite humbled now by the fact that I am becoming more frail. I almost had to say to Sister Josephine at the airport, would you please slow down? Because Sister Josephine's a quick walker, and I couldn't quite keep up to her. It's very humbling to come to that point in our life and realize I'm getting older and I'm more frail and I'm going to die. And we have, along with that, a lot of anxiety and fear about that. What's that going to be like when I'm more frail? What's that going to be like when I need help to get from my room? What's it going to be like when someone else has to feed me? Am I going to be a burden to the community? Am I going to be a burden? Are they going to wish I wasn't here? Is anybody going to bother with me? Are they even going to come to my room? Are they going to reach out to me? All of those questions, I think, haunt us when we come to that point in our life and say, I don't just want to get old, I want to become wise. I want to mature. I went to get my driver's license renewed when I was 75, and the woman at the registry thing, and she said, oh, you're 75, we're going to give you the wisdom discount. And I said to her, I've never heard that before. I love that. I said, I'm going to ask for that everywhere. I'm going to ask for the wisdom discount. Even though I may not be wise, I'm still going to go and see if I can get the wisdom discount. So what's that like? Because what we hear when we meet Simeon and Anna is that they're still sensitive. We hear this lovely line in Luke's Gospel, moved by the Spirit. Moved by the Spirit, they went to the temple. So they're still sensitive to the sensitive. And to understand that, we have to appreciate what it's like to be insensitive, to be desensitized. Because we live in a culture and we're bombarded all the time by noise and music and sound and lights and fast activity and fast cars. And after a while, it numbs us. You get numbed down because there's so much noise going on, so much activity going on. And then we are starting to lose some of our senses. I can't hear anymore, And then we're starting to peer and say, I remember going through this when I had cataracts. It's hard to see. I can't see anymore. Can't hear. I can't walk as much. And so we also are experiencing this business of losing our senses. And it's much quicker. We're way quicker to notice when our senses begin to fail. Our physical senses. I might not accept it. Like I said, I didn't want to say to Sister Josephine, slow down. I just didn't want to be humbled and have to admit that I can't do that anymore. Or I can't hear. I remember one of our priests, for years, he would go around like this, And we kept wanting to say, Father, I think it's time for a hearing aid. But oh no, he didn't want to do that. So I always thought he was cupping his ear to try and hear. So we're in denial about that. But I think we can also become desensitized to the spiritual life as well. And part of it is because we live in a culture that's preoccupied with being young and vital and the physical world. We can lose sight of the spiritual world inside of us. Our spiritual senses can also become numb a little bit. What does that look like? And are there some signs that we could have in our life that might help us to become aware that I'm becoming a little numb, I'm becoming a little desensitized interiorly? Well, one of the signs of that is that we like being comfortable. I like things a certain way. I like to sit in a certain place. I like to have a certain kind of food. I like a certain kind of routine. And I don't like my routines and the things that make me comfortable taken away or dislodged. So we need to monitor that and pay attention to that. Am I insisting on being comfortable? Am I insisting on certain things, doing things a certain way? Because it's a sign that I'm becoming insensitive to others around me. Another sign that we're losing our sense of being sensitive to the spiritual is we lose our sense of compassion. We become more impatient. And we're not able to recognize compassion when we see it in other people. When we see people being compassionate, we don't respond empathetically to that. We respond critically to that. And we can almost be dismissive of their activity. Oh, don't pay them that kind of attention. It's their fault. Don't be like that. So it's almost like we fail to recognize when someone else is being compassionate. Another sign that we're becoming a little desensitized to that spiritual dimension is we become less clear to us what's the goodness of God and what's evil. That could slip away from us. And we start to dismiss small things in our life as, well, it doesn't matter. It's just a little thing. And say, no, it's not a big thing. It's just a little thing, my criticism or my comment or my failure to help or my dismissive attitude, or I don't reply to someone who greets me or something like that. Well, it's just nothing. That's part of that. And along with this, what can happen to us is we lose the tenderness that makes community life possible. community life, because people are living together, we're bumping into each other, and it's irritating, and we don't often have the shock absorbers we had when we were younger. And so living in a community like you do requires a certain tenderness toward each other, a willingness to allow each other to make mistakes and not to be perfect. But we can lose that tenderness, that gentleness, and replace it with a kind of a critical attitude, a critical spirit. So we have this wonderful pair, Simeon and Anna, who present themselves in Luke's gospel as a wonderful model for what it means to be a wise person and what it means to be sensitive. Because they have been preparing, it's quite clear in Luke's gospel, to have this final encounter with God for years. We talk about Anna's 84 years old, Simeon's prophet, been waiting a long time. These two have been preparing to have this final encounter with God. And by accepting their frailty, their own weaknesses, that has made them capable of recognizing God when God appears to them. Instead of being a weakness, they've turned it into a strength. Their frailty has opened their eyes so that they can recognize God who comes in the surprising form of a child, of a baby. Completely unexpected. The last thing in the world you would ever expected was that baby would be the face of God. That baby is an incarnation of God. Somehow their own frailty has made them aware of that and allowed them to be prepared to welcome God who has come in a completely unexpected way into their life. And that's the challenge for all of us as we get older, is my frailty sensitizing me so that I can see in the frailty of others the surprising presence of God. That I can see in other people who, like me, or somebody I'd overlooked before, I never paid attention to, and suddenly I see in them, they are an incarnation of God. And they are calling forth from me something. They're asking something from me. They're asking me to give them something. So when we talk about this journey that we're on, this human journey that we're on, we spend the first part of our life kind of building up our life, being active, being in charge, creating things, building things, working on teams, working in parishes, working in hospitals, working in community centers, whatever it is. And then, once we've developed all these skills, we give ourselves away in those jobs. We give ourselves away to people. And you women have been doing this for all your life, giving yourself away in service to parishes, hospitals, community groups. You've been giving yourself away. And then we come to this point in our life, and now we have to give our death away. No? That's a real mysterious thing to say. I've come this far, I've given my life away, now I have to give my death away. And what does that mean, to give our death away finally? To surrender ourselves finally to God. So one of the writers that I've been drawn to, and it's this French priest, Teilhard de Chardin, who's a paleontologist and was involved in all these digs, archaeological digs, to uncover the human journey and skulls and fragments and all of that. He has some wonderful meditations on this aspect of life. So at one point he's on a dig in China, and he's all by himself out in the mountains somewhere, and it's Easter Sunday. He's out there, and he has no bread, no wine, no altar. But he offers a Mass on the world, and he writes it out. It's a wonderful prayer, Mass on the world. And I've often used it myself in addition to the Mass when I'm praying by myself. But he has two moments in it that I think are quite profound. He said, and they're this, he said, over everything that is to come to birth today, over every new spark of life, every new blade of grass, every bird every chick that's born, every human being that's born, every person who sets out on a new adventure filled with energy and joy. Speak your words. This is my body. Over every new life in the world today. And then he says, and over everything that is to die today. Every animal that dies, every fish that dies, every plant that dies, every human being that dies, every person who suddenly becomes weak and frail. Speak your words. This is my blood. Wonderful, wonderful to come to that point in life and to look at everything that's brand new and to say, this is my body, and everything that's dying, saying, this is my blood. That's our offering. And then he has this wonderful prayer, and I put it in our books along with those icon of Simeon and Anna on moved by the Spirit. So just have a quick little peek at the icon. We have Joseph on the left holding the two doves. And then next to Joseph is Anna. And Anna is a prophetess. That's why she's always pictured, or often pictured with a scroll, because she's a prophet. And then we have Simeon on the right holding the child, and Mary in the center. A lovely image of the presentation in the temple. And then here we have Teilhard's prayer. When the signs of age begin to mark my body, and still more when they touch my mind, when the illness that is to diminish me or carry me off strikes from without or is born within me, when the painful moment comes in which I suddenly awaken to the fact that I am ill or growing old, and above all at that last moment when I feel I am losing hold of myself and I'm absolutely passive within the hands of the great unknown forces that have formed me. In all those dark moments, O God, grant that I may understand that it is you who are painfully parting the fibres of my being in order to penetrate to the very marrow of my substance and bear me away within yourself. Lovely prayer. Because de Chardin had this deep confidence that he was part of the work of creation, that creation wasn't separate from him, that he was part of this work of creation that God had been engaged in for 13 billion years, and that after his death, he would continue to be part of this mysterious work of creation, because he would be sharing in the consciousness that God had placed in creation that was going to continue to bring creation to its final destiny, when all would be one in Christ. And I find that's a very helpful way of talking to my own nephews and nieces about heaven, because some of them grew up with that understanding, that concept of going to heaven, but it's kind of foreign language to them. But I will say to them, do you have a sense that you share in the consciousness of humanity? And they will agree with that somehow we all participate in a common consciousness. We're all kind of united by a deep awareness of the world around us. And this consciousness is something that they believe they can even detect in that world out there. That they have a sense that they can be, when they're in nature, that nature's communing with them. That trees speak. Water speaks. Not as sophisticated as human beings, but there's a consciousness that's part of creation. And this consciousness, this is Teilhard's gift to the church. We weren't very quick to accept it. But this consciousness is driving creation forward. This consciousness created by God is lifting creation up, bringing it forward, helping it to develop, until finally Christ will be all in all. So I think Teilhard believed that when he died, he would become part of this consciousness that's lifting creation towards its fulfillment and bringing all of creation to that point. Do I need to call that heaven? If it helps. But I can call it a consciousness in the world that when I die, I hope I'm part of it. And I hope I've lived my life in such a way that my deep desire is for community. My deep desire is for oneness. So my consciousness, if that's my deepest desire, is going to be on the side of Sophia, on the side of the Holy Spirit, continuing to bring creation to its completion. And alongside of me will be all the saints who shared in that deep desire for community and for oneness. And I don't have to worry about losing anybody. I don't have to worry about, as long as that was the side they took. Instead of being on the side of tearing things down, if you took the side of building things up, you're going to be on this side, moving towards the fullness of creation. I love that image because it's helpful in my conversations with my own nephews and nieces about the future, and it gives us a way of sharing our confidence in the future with one another in language that isn't off-putting to them. So is that a little helpful for you? You might find yourself awkward, stumbling about that, but I found it was really helpful to them to talk about the consciousness of the world and asking them, do you believe the world is sort of self-conscious? Do you believe the world has some of the same self-consciousness that we do? I get lots of nods. They'll say, yep, I do. I said, so do I. So do the saints. And we're all part of that. And when we die, we're going to be part of that too. We're going to be part of this ongoing consciousness that's finally leading us to that point where Christ is all in all. Enough for today. So let's listen again and sing that prayer about turning to God and being saved.
And we shall be saved. Lord, make us known to you. Let us see your face.